So we're continuing in our series today. We are in a series called Blessed, It's Not What You Think. And, what? And we've heard about changing your measurements, changing the way that we see blessing. We've heard about how meek ain't weak. And we've heard how we can get satisfied in God as well. And today I want to talk about focus. I want to talk about focus. This is something that I've been challenged with recently because I'm quite easily distracted. You can ask my wife about this because I've lost count of the number of times that she's asked me to make her a coffee. And because I'm a good husband, I say yes. But 3 hours later, she still has no coffee. I'm easily distracted. If I don't stop what I'm doing and make it then and there, there's no coffee for her. And it brings tension in our relationship, but different story. And I think we can all relate to this because actually you don't have to be married. There's just different times in our lives where we say we'll do something, we intend to do something, but we get distracted and we don't do it. So maybe you've told a friend that actually you want to see them, you want to meet up, but 6 months has gone by and you still haven't seen them. Or maybe you've told your child that you're going to help them with their school project, but it's the night before, the school project's due, and you still haven't started it with them. Or maybe you've just told God that you want to spend more time with him, but it's the morning, and you snoozed your alarm again, and now you have no time for God. So we are easily distracted, and I think we live in a time where there's a lot of distractions as well. So last week, we heard some statistics from Brandy on British people. So this week, we're going to hear some on the Americans, which there's quite a few Americans in the crowd, so I'm going to be careful. But there's research to show that in America, in the American workplace, that people get distracted for up to 3 hours per day at work. Now, that's a long time because if you add that up over a month, it turns out to be around 60 hours per month that people are getting distracted in the workplace. Now, 60 hours per month, or 60 hours, in Europe, that's maybe a week and a half worth of work, but in America, that's probably a normal work week. So that's a lot of time, 60 hours a month of distraction. So I want to talk today about focus, and how should we focus, where should we focus, and where is our focus? Because thankfully for us, I think God saw this coming. I think he knew that we'd be people who are easily distracted. So we can read stories about this in the Bible. Now, we're in our series, Blessed, It's Not What You Think, and we're going through the Beatitudes. So we're in Matthew chapter 5, and today I'm going to read verse 7 and verse 8. It's 2 verses, nice and easy. So it says, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. And blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." And I'm talking about focus. And you might wonder where focus is in those 2 verses, because we have the merciful and we have the pure in heart. It doesn't say blessed are the focused, for they won't be distracted. It says blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. So where does focus come into this? Well, in the Bible, there's 2 conditions of our heart. We can have a pure heart, which we read about here, or we can have a deceitful heart. Now, a deceitful heart is one which is focused on more than one thing, or a heart which wants one thing, but on the outside is showing another. So it's a person who is saying that they want one thing, but actually they really want another. They're just putting that on show, maybe to God, maybe to other people. But a pure heart is a heart after one thing. A pure heart is a heart which wills for one thing. So a pure heart is a heart with focus, and focus on one thing. So then the question becomes, where should that focus be? So another story in the Bible, or a story in the Bible, if you flick your page over, actually, not one, it's quite a jump, to Luke 10. It's a few books away, actually. To Luke 10, and we're looking between verse 38 and verse 42. And it's the story of 2 sisters. So there's a sister called Mary and a sister called Martha. Now, Jesus has come with his disciples, and they've stopped by their house. And Mary and Martha have decided to host Jesus and his disciples. And it's time for dinner. I think the disciples are hungry. Jesus is probably hungry. So we see two different responses from the sisters. There's Martha, who's busy doing lots of different things, trying to get everything ready. And then there's Mary, who sat at Jesus' feet, just listening to him. Now, what Martha's doing many different things, isn't necessarily wrong, because we should serve, but she starts to complain to Jesus. And what we see is that she's complaining to Jesus about what her sister's doing. She's complaining that actually Mary is just sat there pretty much in her eyes doing nothing, whilst Martha's busy preparing everything. So we can read Jesus' response in verse 41. He says, "Martha, Martha, you're worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." So Mary is focused. She is focused on the one thing. And this one thing that she's focused on is Jesus. So we need focus, but we have to be intentional of where our focus is. It has to be on Jesus. Because we can focus on the one thing, and actually it leads to many things. Or if we're like Martha, we're focused on the many things, we get distracted from the one thing. Because we see Jesus, we see Mary was there, sat at Jesus' feet, just listening to him, taking in what she could, being in his presence. But Martha could have been doing the same thing, but she was somewhere else, busy with many things. And there's another verse in the Bible, we actually just sang about it, how we can seek first the kingdom and all will be added. And what Jesus is saying at this point, he's talking to a crowd. They're wondering about food, about drink, about clothes. And he tells them to seek first God's kingdom, to seek first his righteousness, and all of these things will be added to them. So we can see that when we seek God first, the rest will be added. It actually matters on the order that we do this, because it matters where our focus is. So like Mary with her focus on Jesus, when we seek him first, then the rest will be added. But if we seek the stuff that's added, it doesn't end up in us being led to Jesus. It ends up in us being distracted and led away from Jesus. So I want us all to imagine together. I want us to imagine that we are surgeons. And you have a patient which has been wheeled into you. You're in the operating theater. A patient which has come to you on a bed, and you know that they have a heart problem. But you also know that they have problems with their fingers, their toes. They're not getting enough blood to their fingers and toes. They have problems with their muscles. Their muscles aren't properly, they don't have the nutrients that they need because their heart has a problem. And they have problems with their lungs as well. So you're a surgeon. You're stood there. The question is, what are you going to do? What are you going to focus on? Are you going to focus on the many things, on the fingers, the toes, the lungs, on the muscles? Are you going to try pump blood back in, try squeeze the lungs a bit, give them some air, and hope that the person gets better? You're not going to do that. You're going to focus on the heart. You're going to focus on the heart. You're going to get the order right. You're going to focus where it makes sense to focus on the heart, and the rest will come into alignment with the heart. Because the fingers, the toes, the rest of the problems, actually, really, they're just a problem with the heart. But if you focus on those things, they don't make the heart better. So it's important where we focus. Because when we focus on the one thing, the many things will be added. But if we focus on the many things, then they distract us from the one thing. So we need to focus on Jesus. So my question is, where's your focus? Is your focus on the one thing, or is it on the many? And the great thing about this is that this is just the beginning, because this isn't even the actual blessing that it talks about. What is the blessing? The blessing for the pure in heart, the ones that are focused on Jesus, the blessing is that they will see God. So this is beyond just things being added. This is beyond just clothes, food, drink. Actually, we're promised that we'll see God. So what does it mean to see God? This is quite exciting, because there's different ways that we can see God. So the first way that we can see God is actually just being in his presence. So seeing God, being blessed by seeing God, is to be in his presence. Because in the Old Testament, the kings, when they didn't want people in their presence, they told them that they're never going to see them again. They said, I'm never going to see you again, and that means that you're not welcome in my presence. But blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. They will be allowed in his presence. So when we have focus on Jesus, when we seek him first, we get to enter into his presence. At his presence is where we find life. It's where we find peace. It's where we find rest. These many things that we're looking for, often they're found in Jesus' presence. So when we focus on him first, then the rest will be added, and we'll see God. We'll enter into his presence. Another way that we can see God is that we get to see his glory. So when we're focused on Jesus, we get to see his glory. Now, what does this mean? Part of this is that we get to see him moving. We get to see him doing miracles. We get to see him intervening in people's lives. Because when we're focused on him, actually, we start to see how he's working around us. We start to see that these things that are happening, that they're not just coincidences. We get to see and recognize where he's working. So blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. They will see his glory. They will see God moving. They will see miracles. Who here wants to see miracles? I want to see miracles. I want to see that. So where's your focus? Where's my focus? I want to get my focus right. I want to seek him first. The other way in which we will see God is that we'll see him in eternity as well. So this isn't something that just lasts for this life, but it's something that goes beyond that goes into eternity. Because for now, these things, they're just a glimpse of what's to come. So when we can enter into his presence, it's just a glimpse of what's to come. When we get to spend time with Jesus now, actually one day we'll be face to face with him, and we'll get to enter into his presence fully. When we see his glory, right now we just see glimpses. When we see him doing miracles, they're just glimpses. They're showing us what's to come. So we see in part now, but we'll see in eternity. So blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. They will enter into his presence now. They will see his glory, him moving, and we will see him in eternity. We'll see partly now, but we'll see fully in eternity. Now, I was talking about 2 verses today, so I haven't forgotten the other one. We also have blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. So I want to share a story to wrap this up, because there's a story of a man named Stephen, which is actually one of my favorite stories in the whole Bible. And we get to see how his focus led him to being merciful. Because again, there's an order to this. When we seek God first, and the rest will be added. And one of those things is our character. So we want to grow in character, but actually we see that this is added on when we first seek God. So there's a man named Stephen. And now Stephen, this is a really interesting story because some crazy stuff happens with him, but actually we can find out that his position was an interesting one. So Jesus has died, he's resurrected, he's gone to heaven, and he's left his disciples. They're busy praying and spreading the word of God, teaching people how to obey what Jesus has been teaching, and they have a problem. And their problem is that certain people aren't getting the food when it's being given out. So there's certain widows who aren't receiving the food that is being given out. So what do the disciples do? They choose some people to do this. And now Stephen is one of those people who has chosen to do this. And I don't know if you have dinner ladies in your country, but in England we have dinner ladies. And their whole job is basically to help dinner ladies. Let me explain. Their whole job, is at lunchtime at schools, they have to help people get their lunch. That's all they're there for. And obviously, they have their part to play in a school, but generally, they're not seen as one of the people in a higher position. If the children are being naughty, they don't have all that much power. They have to send the children to a teacher. These are people who are just there to serve, and they're called dinner ladies. So Stephen, in a way, is like a dinner lady. He's just there to help people get their food. Now, when I used to read this story, I used to think that Stephen was this man who had this great position in the kingdom, who the disciples had chosen to do these great things. But actually, he was just there to help people get food. He was quite an ordinary man. He was doing quite ordinary things. But he was a man who had focus. And he was a man who was full of grace, full of power. We can read it. There was a time where his face looked like an angel to people. This is a man who was just a dinner lady, but he was full of focus. He was seeking first Jesus and his kingdom. So what do we read? We can read on, and we read that Stephen encountered a bit of a problem because he was doing miracles. He was doing miracles, and people weren't happy with this. So this story is in Acts. You can read about it later around chapter 7 to 8. It's worth a read because Stephen's doing miracles, and a bunch of Jewish people weren't happy with him. So they started making things up about him. They started telling lies, and they ended up getting him to be brought before the Sanhedrin, which was like the Jewish courts in a way, to be trialed. Now, I was thinking about distraction, and I was thinking about the distractions in my life. And sometimes that's a text message, or it could be maybe a new like on my profile picture, or something like that. But I get easily distracted. And then here's Stephen, and he has angry men who want to kill him, but he doesn't get distracted. He stays focused. He stays focused on the one thing. So where's our focus? Because Stephen is a man who is focused. So it turns out he gives this great speech. He gives a great history of the Jews, and he ends it quite personally. He starts telling the people that their fathers, that they killed the people leading up to the Messiah, to the chosen one, and now that they have personally killed the chosen one. Obviously, they're not happy. So they take him outside, they stone him. And what is amazing for me is that he actually sees God and he sees Jesus. He sees God's glory and he sees Jesus stood at the right hand of God. So we know that Stephen was a man who is pure in heart because he sees God. This is the promise. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. And Jesus has stood there. This is the only time in the New Testament where Jesus is standing at the right hand of God. So it's like Jesus is saying, well done, Stephen. Well done. Like, welcome home. I'm proud of you. Stephen is a man of focus, and he sees God. Another part about being merciful, because Stephen's last breath is, Lord, don't hold this against them. He has mercy towards these people who are killing him. They don't really have a good reason to kill him, but he has mercy towards them. Because he was focused and the rest was added. His character was added. This was completely natural to him. I love how natural it was. It wasn't like he was doing this because he felt he had to. It wasn't like he was doing this because it was the right thing to do. He was just doing this as an expression of his heart. He was doing this because it's who he is. So where's your focus? Do you want to seek the many things? Because some of them aren't bad. To serve isn't bad. To prepare food, to be hospitable towards people, it's not bad. But if that's our focus, if we're focused on that, if we're trying to do that to get to a right place with God, then we're distracted. Because actually it's available to us. Jesus' presence is available to us. It's available to those who are pure in heart, those with focus, those who are focused on him. So that's my question for you today, is where's your focus? Maybe your focus is on Jesus. Maybe your focus is already there. If it is, I want you to ask for more, to be more in his presence, to feel his presence more, to see more of his glory, to see more of him this side of eternity. Like Stephen, he got to actually see God's glory and see Jesus stood at his right hand. If your focus is on the many things, then just come back. Come back to focusing on him. Just say to him, God, I want to come back to focusing on you. I want to change the order of where my focus is. Because when you're focused on him, then the many things are added and you will see him. Because blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. And let's just imagine together. Let's imagine a group of people who are completely focused on Jesus. Let's imagine a group of people like Stephen, whose faces are shining like angels, who are full of grace and power. What effect would that have on the surroundings around you? What effect would that have on the people around you, on the city around you? To Stephen, it meant death, but actually this really kicked something off at the time. The church were persecuted, but what it meant is that they spread out and the gospel went to the ends of the earth. So for Stephen, this focus, although it didn't look like it ended amazing for his life, apart from that he saw God and was with him, actually the effect that it had beyond him was huge. So when we're focused, we don't only affect those around us, we affect the next generations as well. So imagine with me what that would look like.